What's going on, everybody? Appreciate you guys pulling up today. It's your brother Wise, and today we are speaking about one of the most controversial offices in the state of Georgia, because whether it's elections, business growth, or protecting your money, the Secretary of State sits right at the center of it. And let's be honest, after 2020, Georgia has been under a microscope. So the real question is, who can restore trust and actually run this system the right way? Joining me today is Kelvin King. What's going on, Kelvin? How you doing today? Appreciate you pulling up and hanging out with us today.
Hi there, Brother Wise. Happy to be here. It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Outstanding, outstanding. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. And I want to jump right into the question. So for the people of Georgia who may not know who you are yet, what's your connection to Georgia specifically, and why this office and why now?
Okay, all right. Well, great. Well, I'm Georgia born and raised. In fact, last week, if you were listening to Clarence Thomas's comments, he made a statement that I think I want to try to use myself. He said that, yeah, I'm American by birth, but Georgian by the grace of God. And I kind of look at it the same way. I was born in Macon, Georgia, raised here throughout, high school and such. I was a pretty good student. I was a gifted student, so I made good grades, and I was fortunate enough to get an appointment to the U.S. Air Force Academy after high school, and from that point, my life changed. And I have a lot of experiences, particularly when it comes to my military service and my business career, and even politics, that informs me and puts me in a position to carry out the duties of the Secretary of State's office. And like you said earlier, it's a consequential seat. I would say this is the most consequential race of the 2026 cycle, because it touches every Georgian to some capacity, from voting to making a living for themselves, working in a company and a business, and saving money for your future. So those are the three key areas that the Secretary of State's office is responsible for. And I think people need to be aware of what's going on in each one of those areas. And I'm here to share information, let them know the state of the office, and share a little bit more about my platform and how I plan on turning this office around and creating a trusted office for the people of Georgia.
Outstanding. So I understand this isn't your first time running for a seat. I know a couple years back you ran for Senate seat, I believe lost in the primary to Herschel Walker. How did that race, or how would you say that race has helped you or is going to help you moving forward in this upcoming election?
I mean, I would say that race helped me tremendously. I know it was an L. I don't like taking L's now. I'm pretty competitive, but that was an L that I would say benefited me overall. It benefited me personally with my family. This is something that has nothing to do with politics, but my son found Jesus. He gave his life to the Lord, so he was saved during my race. To me, that was well worth it. I also was able to interact with people all across the state of Georgia. I visited all 159 counties, and no one's ever done that in 30 days. So that was a world record, so to speak. But what I got from it was a lot of information that really informs me now as I'm running for Secretary of State. And that is, most Georgians want the same thing, Brother Wise. We want a way to make a living for our families. We want to live in safe environments, and we want to educate our kids the way we want our kids to be educated. And that was pretty much across the board with any community I entered. And that was actually pretty inspiring, so to speak, because it makes politics easy. It's not about red or blue. It's about who has the best plan and who's willing to do the work to get the plan done. And I think that is a good position to be in. But that's what it taught me. That race taught me that, but it also taught me a few tricks, dirty tricks that they play in politics. So we're well aware of some of those tricks now. So we're prepared for this particular race.
Understood. Now, would you consider 2020 a turning point for you personally?
I'm thinking that you're referring to the election outcome.
Yes.
In 2020. That was definitely an eye opener, because I was tracking the race in 2016. I do like these calculations. I'm pretty, some of it is nerdy, but I like to do trend analysis and projections. So I knew in 2016 that President Trump was going to win, because Pennsylvania was a linchpin state, and his bump was going to be at least the same bump as the previous Republican presidential candidate, Mitt Romney. So I knew the weekend before that he was probably going to win. I told my golf buddies that on that weekend before the election. So I did the same thing in 2020, the same projection, and there was no doubt in my mind that he was going to win. But election night came, and we saw that. I mean, we heard that he was well in the lead here in Georgia. I know that much. Secretary of State Raffensperger at the time, made a very convincing statement that the election outcome is pretty much, known now that President Trump, his margin of his lead was insurmountable. But then when we woke up the next day, everything had changed. So I had questions because my math, I think my math typically works fairly well, but I just didn't understand how that happened. And lots of questions, started coming up from that point on. And I was very interested and intrigued as to what are these data analysts information showing? Like, how did Joe Biden win when he was in the basement the whole time? It was just very confusing. So yeah, a lot of questions came out of 2020 for me.
Understood. Georgia was right there, in the middle of the controversy. Obviously, we talked about it, incessantly on this channel and obviously other platforms, in reference to what went down. I want to talk about the elephant in the room, down there. Do you think Georgia voters trust their elections now based on, some of the things that have come out over the previous, 4 or 5 years or so?
No, sir, I don't. And that's unfortunate because I know that the Secretary of State's office is really pushing hard to try to get Georgians to gain trust in their elections. They keep talking about they've done audits and they've done studies and surveys, and our elections are the most trusted and 95% belief in our elections. And that stuff is not accurate. You have to dig into data. You can make numbers say what you want them to say. And until you dig into it and make sure you know specifically what questions are being asked and specifically what questions are being answered, you don't know whether or not that survey is accurate. So I think there's a lot of propaganda because when I travel across the state of Georgia, very rarely do I get even 10% of the audience saying that they trusted our elections in 2020,
Wow.
2022, and 2024. It is insane. In fact, I call it a crisis situation in the state of Georgia. When you have this many Georgians who distrust our elections, you don't just get apathy. Apathy has been around for a while, but you're starting to get distrust and anger. And we don't want to be in a situation where our electorate or a majority of our electorate is distrustful and angry. So something needs to be done. We've got to restore trust. And I have a great solution for restoring trust. But let me just give you a couple examples of how much of a crisis our state is in when it comes to elections. We all know 2020 went off with lots of questions, a lot of distrust. I'm distrustful of it. And we just want proof of the outcome. That's all we're asking. We also know in 2022, there was an election in DeKalb County. I know you know where DeKalb County is, but Michelle Long Spears, her outcome, she ran in an election, a municipal election. She ended up getting third place. She questioned that outcome. They did a hand recount, found out that she had 0 election day votes. And the hand recount showed that she actually won that election. She went from third place to first place because she realized that she had 0 election day votes, and she knew she voted for herself. So she knew there was a problem. And what the problem was is that the QR code that contains your choices, your selections, it was incorrect. And the Secretary of State's office said that it was a coding error. But fortunately, Ms. Spears had the resources to complain and fight for her election, and she had it turned over. 2 years later, a similar outcome happened in Hall County here in North Georgia with the city of Oakwood. In that election, 600 people received the wrong absentee ballot. They weren't allowed to vote in that particular municipal election. Well, 300 people ended up voting in that election. And the delta between the first place and the second place candidate was 88 votes. So you had 300 illegal voters, and the delta between the first place and second place was 88 votes. Now, who won that election? The county election officials, they saw that there was a problem and they raised their hands and they presented that problem to the Secretary of State's office. And the Secretary of State told them that they need to certify the election anyway, that it would not be redone. It's not going to be changed. Well, the county election officials, it didn't sit well with them. They went to the state elections board last year to present their case. And now the public knows about that bad election that occurred in 2024. No one would have known about it if they hadn't had the guts, the courage, the county election staff, to go to the state elections board and present their case. These are just two examples that we know of that were bad election outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
3 if you add 2020. So now you tell me, is the operations of the Secretary of State's office continuing success, business as usual? Nope. It's a turnaround situation. We need somebody that's going to come into that office, a new leader that's going to turn that office around completely. We got to get our elections in order. We got to get our business services in order. We got to get our securities oversight in order. And I can go into the details of each one of those agencies, departments, if you like.
Okay. I think we'll get there here in a little bit. Georgia passed SB 202 to tighten election rules. In your opinion, do you think that's worked?
I think SB 202 went a long way to help our election outcomes. I do agree. I was a big fan of it because I was distrustful of 2020. So I wanted something in place that could reinstill trust in our elections. Like, for instance, SB 202 and SB 189, those were two election bills that were passed after 2020 that helped remove the state elections board from being under the Secretary of State's office. Now, the state elections board is a separate entity that provides guidance, oversight, checks and balances, if you will, over the Secretary of State's office. They also provide rules and guidance and such to the county election offices too. So SB 202 and 189 remove that office from under the Secretary of State's office, so it can be an independent agency, and remove the Secretary of State himself from being the chair of that board. So now it's a complete independent agency. And I think that's one of the best things that came out of those two elections bills, because now we have checks and balances. And frankly, I'm the only candidate that's very supportive of having a strong state elections board for that very reason, to provide oversight into the operations of the Secretary of State's office.
Got you. Do you think it went far enough, or do you think they could have gone, even further?
No, I think it could have gone a little bit further. Right now, we're seeing one of the biggest issues is that the Dominion voting machine is not trusted and it's vulnerable, and it hasn't been updated since we bought it, and it's expensive. I mean, like, all these are issues with this Dominion voting machine, and we're actually one of a handful of states that utilizes a Dominion electronic voting system throughout the state. Every county and every voter must use this system. Very few states in the country does that. Most states have hand-marked paper ballots. And that is actually my solution, Brother Wise. In order to get around all this distrust, all these voting irregularities, let's get to the basics. Let's do what we've done since day one and do hand-marked paper ballots. We can do it in a secure way. We can provide oversight and monitoring of the counting, and we can have election day results on election night. And we can have a complete auditable system. And that actually adheres to the laws of Georgia, which requires that every voter must be able to verify their vote on paper before it's ever tabulated. That's the law. And unfortunately, the way we vote with these systems, we don't even abide by the law. And let me explain why real quick. Okay. So the law says that every voter must be able to validate their vote and verify their vote on paper before it's counted. That is part of a chain of command, meaning the original source document is your completed document that you completed yourself as a voter. When you go and vote, this is the process. You show your ID at the polling station, and they match your voting ability, your registration ability on a voter registration database. Once you're cleared to vote, you get a card, and you take that little card to a ballot marking device, which is a screen that your ballot pops up on once you insert that card. And then you select, your choice for Senate, your choice for governor, Kelvin King for Secretary of State. You hit that button, and then you hit print ballot. Now, we all know this process. Your ballot comes out, and the poll worker normally says, review this ballot, make sure that your selections are listed on that paper. And there is text on that ballot, and you're supposed to verify that. And they ask you to slide that ballot into the scanner device, and that scanner then checks in that ballot as being cast. It's a cast vote record.
Okay.
But the problem with that process is that the scanner doesn't read the text. That's what you verify is the text. The scanner only reads the QR code. And you can't read a QR code as a human. So you're never able to truly verify your selections on that ballot. And when I gave you that example of Michelle Long Spears in DeKalb County, that's what happened. The text on the ballot was correct. However, the QR code did not have the selections of the voter. That's the problem with the QR codes. And that's why under Kelvin King administration, we will use hand-marked paper ballots. And that's why we're in the crisis that we are in right now. As you know, we have up until July 1st to get rid of the QR codes because it does not meet the law of Georgia. And we're in a bit of a crisis right now because nothing has been done to prepare us to remove that QR code from our ballots.
Now, what you're saying is, and I want to make sure I clarify this, is elected, are you I guess pushing to replace Dominion or get rid of it in general and just go straight to just full-fledged paper ballots?
Yeah, I'm full-fledged paper ballots. I'm going to get rid of the Dominion machine.
Okay.
I'm okay with the machine to help tabulate because I want to make sure we have same-day results. So under a King administration, this is how it's going to work, Brother Wise. We're going to show up to vote. We're going to use hand-marked paper ballots to vote. If you're a special needs person, we will retain a few ballot marking devices for special needs situations. But that's like 3,000 across the state versus
small percentage, right?
Very, very small, right? Okay. Correct. Your vote will be cast by you on a piece of paper that is security paper. Now, on election night, we will have the results because we will utilize the machine tabulation of the results at the precinct level. That's a key phrase, at the precinct level. But every county has a 7 days to certify their elections. During that period of certification, every county will do a hand validation or hand recount of those votes. That is how you determine accuracy in your elections, and your machine tabulated count must match the hand recount. That hand recount will be monitored. It will have monitors and reviewers to make sure that it's accurate. And once those two numbers mesh, once they match, you have a certified election at that point. That's my solution for ensuring trusted elections going forward. And the thing that it ensures is that the original source document, which is your completed hand-marked paper ballot, is always the baseline for an audit. That means that our elections will always be solid because we're going to always have the original source document that you completed as a voter. And that way, if there's ever any challenges, we can always audit the paper.
Got you. Now, quick question in reference. I'm glad you brought up auditing, auditing accountability aspect of things. Do you believe that Georgia should require automatic audits after every election?
Yeah, currently right now, but let me explain, the process that I just described. An audit can occur with that process as well. I don't think that it would be as much of an issue with my solution as it is now, because we're going to have that original source document, so we can always do an audit. And one thing that I need to clarify to your listeners and your supporters is that the term audit can mean different things to different people. We hear that the Secretary of State's office has done several audits and the election outcome hasn't changed. But the truth is, an audit, we all know what an audit means. An audit means that every single paper, every single dollar is accounted for.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't done that. They've done a risk limiting audit. It stands for, RLA. It stands for risk limiting audit. What it is it takes a sample size of a variety of ballots from a pool, and that sample size is supposed to be representative of the overall pool. It's a statistics play. It's a terminology called statistically significant sample. I took stats in college, so I understand what they're doing. But the truth is, when we're dealing with our elections, I don't want to do sampling. I just want to count the ballots.
Absolutely. In your opinion, what does accountability look like? And when it comes to, I guess, asking for or a candidate requesting an audit, is it a situation where they have to, if they feel, like something, may have gone awry, or maybe there's something fishy going on, they have to request the audit, or will that be automatic? And, in your opinion, what does the accountability look like under your watch?
Yeah, I think, the the candidate has to request an audit, and I'm more than happy to do an audit. So if there's a candidate that thinks that or feels that their election outcome was uncertain, then yeah, please do. We're going to be a Secretary of State's office that is an office of the people. So if you're a candidate that has some concerns, we will verify that. That's how you regain trust, Brother Wise. The issue is accountability, is transparency, is integrity, is character, is all of that. And what we're going to bring under a King administration to the Secretary of State's office is a revamping of that. We're going to do new core values. On day one, the core values of our office is going to be integrity first, service before self, and excellence in all we do. Those are the Air Force core values, if you didn't know what that was. I know you're Navy, but those are Air Force core values. And those are going to be the new core values, because I think most people agree with that. And then once that's instilled, once the team, the leadership team is, I may have to make some changes in the leadership team, but once my team is settled, once all the staff understands what their marching orders are, it's going to be a well-performing organization, because I'm going to inspect what I expect. I'm going to be a hands-on leader. I'm going to be strong when it comes to fulfilling our core values, and then I'm going to execute our plan. I've already assessed the situation. We know the office is failing, so we're going to do a turnaround situation. We're going to implement hand-marked paper ballots. We're going to clean up our voter rolls, because if you don't have clean voter rolls, you're pulling unqualified, bad voters, and you're counting incorrect, unverified votes. And then we're going to focus on the business services side of the Secretary of State's office. As you know, every business in Georgia has to go through the Secretary of State's office for registration. And then the Secretary of State's office is also responsible for over 42 occupational licenses. I'm one of those. I'm a licensed general contractor. I'm a builder. I do a lot of work across the state of Georgia and Tennessee and Kentucky. And I've got to make sure that I'm a legal operating construction company. So my license has to be, first of all, I've got to get my license, obtain the license through taking tests and that sort of thing. But I've got to renew my license annually through the licensing board. The Secretary of State's office has been very low performing in that area. Many people, as you may know, are complaining about how long it takes for licensing to be approved through that office. There were several news reports about the online license renewal system being down, and when they call for assistance, there's nobody who answers the phone. So they're stuck. A business, an entrepreneur, they're stuck. I can't operate without a license, but the Secretary of State's office is taking too long to turn my license around. So I'm stuck in the middle now. That's not what government is supposed to be. As a business owner, I mean, my construction company is 13 years old. I've been doing this for a long time. Business is hard. Competition is tough. I don't want to have to compete with my state agency that I'm paying.
And time is money.
Time is money. And the Secretary of State's office is supposed to be a service provider. That's what it'll be under a King administration. And one thing I wanted to add, we're going to implement a solution called industry liaisons within the Secretary of State's office under my administration. An industry liaison is simply a person who may know, like for instance, my industry is construction. And under construction, there's licenses from general contractors, electricians, plumbers, land surveyors. So I'll have a single point of contact that will be like the infrastructure industry liaison to be able to help people when they call into the Secretary of State's office, route them to the right places, route them to the right boards, route them to the right website locations, just to help them. They're not providing legal advice, but they're just providing some assistance, because we've been getting none and no help from the Secretary of State's office for far too long. That's just one of my solutions when it comes to business support and business services.
Understood. I want to go back to voting real quick. Mail-in voting rules in Georgia. It looks like they did tighten up the absentee ballot rules. And in your opinion, do you think that was the right move for them to make? And would you tighten them or further expand access to the absentee ballots?
Yeah, I would do a couple things when it comes to absentee ballots. First of all, I don't believe in no excuse absentee ballots. I think that you need to have a reason to request an absentee ballot. So I would lean on that side. Also, when it comes to our voter roll maintenance, a bunch of absentee ballots out there hurts our voter roll maintenance because you don't always know if it's a qualified voter that's receiving that application. And secondly, when you go and renew your driver's license at the Department of Driver Services, you're automatically registered to vote. That is an option that was passed by a legislature that I'm not in support of that personally. I mean, I can't change that as Secretary of State, but what I can do is I can petition our legislature to crack down and make that a little bit more tight of a process. I do want people to vote when they want to vote, but it needs to be a choice. So when you get a driver's license, you need to opt into registering to vote. It shouldn't be an automatic opt-in. So that's where I stand when it comes to voter registration, when it comes to absentee ballots, and all of that plays into maintaining clean voter rolls.
Makes sense. Quick question in reference to fraud and the citizens of Georgia, feeling comfort in the elections. Do you think that there is a problem with fraud, voter fraud in Georgia, or do you think it's just the perception of that there just may be some, wonky things that have happened in some of these elections?
That's a great question. I'm glad you asked that, because I think that differentiates a lot of voters, because a lot of voters want to move on and they want to see proof. Well, I know there's fraud in Georgia's elections because I listened to the cases in the state elections board meetings. If more people listen to those cases, they see what's going on. I mean, for one simple example, there's a lady from the Bahamas who's not a citizen. She's voted 23 times. When she was caught, she voted 3 more times afterwards. And when she was brought to the state elections board, she was brought in front of the board, and all she said was, "Oh, well, I just voted because my husband went to vote." And I'm thinking to myself, first of all, how do we allow that to continue to happen time and time again? We have dirty voter rolls, and we need to put some effort into cleaning them up. And I have a solution for that as well. Under a King administration, we're going to remove Georgia from this program called ERIC. It stands for Electronic Registration Information Center. What it is, it's a third-party agency that receives personal identification information from voters. And what they're supposed to do is they're supposed to scrub when people move in and out of the state, to scrub their voter registration to make sure that they're not registered in 2 states and that they're coming into Georgia, voting in Georgia, and leaving like South Carolina and voting in South Carolina as well. So, I mean, it's a great idea, but the system doesn't work because only half of the states uses this system and no states that border Georgia uses this system. So we're paying 6 figures every year for a system that doesn't even clean our voter rolls. So under a King administration, we're going to evaluate any kind of new technology where we can use it to review voter registrations from state to state. But I'm going to sign direct intergovernmental services agreement with secretaries of state in our neighboring state and other states to where we can share voter information to make sure that no citizen is voting in 2 states for a single election.
Okay, cool. I kind of got in some trouble about 2 years ago. You can't really talk about voter fraud. I mean, they will smack you down if you have any conversations around voter fraud. Down in Fulton County, because I was covering it, being from down there, I'm still, interested in what's happening in the state of Georgia. And, there were things that came out, around Fulton County where there were more people registered to vote than there were actually people that lived in the county. I'm just like, and that included the children. And I'm just like, how does this happen? Right. How does this happen? And no one wants to talk about it. And they wouldn't really allow people to discuss it. But I remember watching, some of the meetings that they were having, from the Georgia voter election. And it came out that, elections board, and it came out like, yeah, this is a thing, and they said that they were fixing it. I don't know if it has been fixed because I hadn't heard anything else about it. This was 2 years ago, right? But I just found out, I was like, man, this is weird, and there seems like a lot of shenanigans happening in a multitude of counties. It's
unfortunate. I don't know if you've seen the videos that a gentleman named Jason Frazier has been posting, where he goes to MARTA stations, and there's dozens of people registered to vote at a MARTA station, or empty lots where there's dozens of people are voted in empty lots. This means that our voter rolls are not being cleaned up and maintained. Just last year, the Secretary of State's office said that, they're going to clean 500,000 voters that have questionable registrations. And I don't know if anything has been done for those 500,000 voters, because it takes time to clean a voter list. You got to stay on it constantly, because there's certain rules that restricts you from immediately removing someone from the voter list. So you've got to put effort into it. The Secretary of State's office has to provide oversight, guidance, and direction to the counties to make sure they do that as well. So under my administration, we're going to make sure that the pool of voters that we can select from are accurate, because if you don't, you get in a situation like what's going on in Fulton County. If you were paying attention earlier this year when the FBI did their seizure of the Fulton County ballots, they did that because we were just looking for answers and evidence of the outcome of the Fulton County election, right? And that evidence should have been provided in the tabulation. It's called tabulator tapes. And this is something that our state elections board have been requesting for months and months and months from Fulton County. In fact, they subpoenaed Fulton County for these tabulation tapes, because what the tapes tell you, it's part of the chain of custody. And what it tells you is the number of votes that occurred. And there's signatures that's supposed to be on these tabulation tapes that certifies that it stayed within the chain of custody, that these votes are accurate and they should be counted. Well, guess what happened? Fulton County had dozens of tabulator tapes that equated to about 315,000 votes that were unsigned tabulator tapes. That breaks the chain of custody, meaning now that election is in question. 315,000 votes, I just explained to you. And there was also 10 tabulator tapes that weren't even available, missing, not just unsigned, they weren't there. That equates to about 2,000 votes per tape, so about 20,000 votes. We don't know where they are. Wow. These are the types of things that the FBI is going to uncover in their investigation, and it's going to make Fulton County look terrible, but more so, it's going to make our Secretary of State look terrible, because they're not doing their job of managing these elections appropriately.
Man, that is crazy. Goodness gracious. I mean, Fulton County's been looking bad for quite some time.
Well, that's true.
Unfortunately, but unfortunately, I want to shift gears. You kind of jumped on it a little bit, because the Secretary of State, in Georgia also plays a huge role in business, and you kind of jumped on it a little bit. Georgia's considered extremely a business-friendly state.
Correct.
But do you think that it's friendly to the little guy, to small business, which is known to be the backbone, of our country?
That's a great question. I think it's a very insightful question, because, we always hear about Georgia being the #1 state to do business in. Like we've heard that year after year after year. But for a business owner and someone who's extremely adept in the market, I monitor these things. I monitor the state regulations and rules. I want to make sure that we maintain that best state to do business in title. And what I've learned is that, according to the Georgia Public Policy Foundation, I respect that agency is nonpartisan. They found that Georgia is the bottom 4 states out of 50 states. We're in the bottom 4 when it comes to red tape and bureaucracy. And that, what you just alluded to, is the problem. A lot of small businesses, they don't have the ability to hire big time attorneys to interpret this stuff, these rules and these steps. They don't have the staff to have, one person doing the registrations and one person out doing the sales and one person out making the product. Sometimes it's just one person doing all of the above. Yeah. And that can be discouraging, because most businesses are started from scratch. I started my business from a bedroom of my home 13 years ago. It was just me doing everything, from the superintendent, the project manager, the estimator, the lawyer, the sales guy, and the maintenance guy. I did it all. And that first year, I made enough money to move from my bedroom to my basement. And I grew out of my basement. I mean, that's how difficult it is.
That's how it works, though. You're absolutely right.
And in the basement, I grew. I started hiring 1099s, and then I was eventually able to hire W-2s. And now, like I mentioned earlier, I have over 30 employees, over 300 subcontractors under my master agreement, where I operate all across Georgia and a couple other states. It was hard. And I don't want to have to fight with the state of Georgia. Fortunately, my background is administrative. I know government procurement. I know the government rules and steps, because when I did serve in the Air Force, my job was a contracting officer. It's just kind of ironic how God puts you in these positions, and you have no idea why you're a contracting officer in your Air Force career. And then you have no idea why you go and work for a construction company doing sales, which I did, because I'm learning how to do sales. I'm learning how to do the administrative work, and God allowed me to open up a construction company. Now I know all the facets of business now.
Yeah.
Every business owner is not that way. A lot of people that are really good electricians or drywall layers or flooring guys, they may not be as good on the administrative side.
Well, they don't have the experience that you have as far as dealing with the contracts and the administrative aspects of things. They just know how to do the work, and they're really good at it. And that's the challenge with small business.
And that's why the Secretary of State's office is so important. What they can do is they can make it easier for them to navigate their system. By my solution, like I said, is having a website that works, having people on the phone having people there to answer the phone when people call, and to implement the industry liaison solution that I mentioned earlier, where I have a person who understands your industry, may not understand your particular business, but they understand your industry, and they can help you navigate the ups and downs and all the steps that it takes to be an official business, to be a qualified, certified business with a license, and to make sure that your personal occupational license is up to speed so that you can go out and make a living for yourself. So it's very important. I can't stress enough how important it is to make sure that the business licensing and business formation services are top notch. That's a key, because we want to maintain our best state to do business in title, and we don't want to make it more difficult for people to just make a living for themselves.
Absolutely. When you look at the current administration, in the White House, and they're doing everything that they can to incentivize people to start small businesses, especially during the shutdown. We lost so many businesses, so many small businesses closed, never opened back up. And that also meant we lost a lot of jobs behind that as well. So we definitely need to make it easier for people to jump out there, take that risk, and be willing to get out there, start these businesses, and with hopes that eventually they will hire that next generation, which has been something that seems like it's been overlooked by a lot of administrations, a lot of people in politics. In your opinion, what do you believe is the biggest frustration for small business owners right now that they face?
I think it's intimidation. I think that once you do get the courage to try to do your own thing, learn a trade or be good at something to where you want to sell it to somebody, that's tough in and of itself. But it's also a little intimidating when, you can't just start a business. You've got to get a business license. You have to figure out if it's going to be an S corp, a LLC, a C corp. That can be a little intimidating. The turnaround time, the cost for the fees and the licensing fees, and then you have to determine, well, do I need an occupational license to do my job, or can I just go start working from this point on? So I want to make sure that we have support in that office. I'm going to team with the SBA because I have a lot of experience with the Small Business Administration. It's a federal agency. It's not a state agency. It's a federal agency. But the SBA focuses on small businesses, and they do a lot of events and trainings, and they have a lot of support, financial loans, all types of things to help small businesses. I'm very, very astute when it comes to that. I'll be a Secretary of State in Georgia that partners with the SBA in Washington. Those are the types of solutions that I'm bringing to the table as hopefully your next Secretary of State, because I have the business experience. And I'm actually the only candidate, Brother Wise, that actually has a real business in this race. So to me, it's an easy decision. I'm the only candidate that has employees, W-2 employees. And that's where we all want to get to, right? I mean, I know when I first started, I wanted to be able to have people to help me.
Absolutely.
And it takes a grind. It's a real grind to get to that point. And let's just be a partner for our businesses versus an impediment, because it can be very intimidating. So that's the biggest issue. I think the intimidation of the administrative burden and the paperwork.
Absolutely. And speaking of that, just, to help cut through the red tape, how long should it take a person that wants to start a business? How long do you think it should take, in the state of Georgia? Would you put together, I know you were talking about some liaisons and things of that nature. Are these people going to help? Let's say, for instance, someone wants to start a construction company. They're, into, electricity, maybe they're an electrician, maybe they're an HVAC, maybe they're a plumber, something along those lines, drywall, whatever. And they're really good at that. Where they're like, hey, I want to put my money where my mouth is. I want to start my own organization. Will there be some, liaisons that will be out there to help those people navigate that process, because
Yes.
that is a big challenge, for a lot of folks. I know down there in Georgia, I know my little brother is an electrician, and he's trying to start his own company. And that's been the challenge for him, is trying to figure out, okay, what is the best, most efficient way to do this?
Right.
And to get through the red tape, because, he's just a young person out there, in DeKalb, and trying to figure it out. And there's a lot of red tape out there.
Yeah. Your brother is one of several people in that circumstance. And that is an area that is near and dear to my heart. Business is tough. I started it from scratch, and it took a lot of guts, a lot of prayers, and it's probably one of the hardest things I've ever done, and the scariest thing too, because it's your time and your money,
Mm-hmm.
and you don't know if you're going to always get a return. So what I will do is I will make sure that we have programs that we team up with, like I said, the SBA. We'll do other programs that stand alone, just this Georgia Secretary of State's office, training on how to do a startup, training on how to do business financials, how to budget. All of those are key components of maintaining a business, not just starting. You see, I didn't say a whole lot about starting, but maintaining the business is where you want to end up being, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it takes certain skills to maintain the business. You got to be able to project. You got to be able to forecast. These are little sessions that, as under a King administration, we're going to conduct these types of trainings throughout the state of Georgia, because it's so key and so critical to educate, support our small business owners, and give them the confidence it takes to do that. Because, like you said, small business truly is the backbone of our industry, or of our country, when it comes to commerce and business.
Absolutely. I want to talk about Georgia competing with other states in the South, Texas, Florida, out there. These states, they are attracting businesses like no other. How does Georgia compete with Florida and Texas? It seems like, I know up here, I'm in Maryland, and those in the Northeast, they don't think Georgia when it comes business. They think Texas, they think Florida. I haven't heard anybody say Georgia, that's where I want to move my business to.
Man, that hurts me when you say that. But I kind of see where you're coming from, because, like I said, Georgia is one of the bottom states when it comes to business red tape and bureaucracy. Our tax structure, we've been arguing about reducing our taxes for years and years, and we still don't have a solution. While our northern neighbor and our southern neighbor has zero income state taxes.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got to compete. And I'm very concerned about our leadership in Georgia right now. One thing I will promise you, though, I will be a Secretary of State that understands that competition, that will eliminate red tape. I'm going to make sure I support businesses as much as I can in terms of training and giving them advice, and partnering with agencies that can help them, like the SBA. That is what we're supposed to do as a Secretary of State. And I will push and press my governor. I don't know who it's going to be once I'm Secretary of State, but I will press my governor to implement and get behind and push these types of initiatives that's coming out of my Secretary of State's office.
Okay. I could have added Tennessee in there as well, because Tennessee they have a lot of organizations moving in, especially from the West Coast. I heard Starbucks is moving out there, In-N-Out Burgers moving out there. And like I said, even being up here, you just don't hear. I hear people want to move to Georgia. I don't hear business owners that want to move to Georgia. And, even for myself as a business owner and looking for a place to move, I was just like, man, financially, tax wise, it's not one of the more favorable states there for somebody that has an organization that wants to move to Georgia. If you could reiterate, I guess, a little bit more about your plan to make Georgia the #1 state for either entrepreneurs and for people like myself that would maybe like to move to Georgia, but when you compare it to other states, surrounding states, whether that be Alabama or Tennessee or Florida, or even going as far out as Texas, Georgia, hey, I had to look at it tax and do the math. I was like, financially, it just doesn't make sense.
Well, we're going to change that under King administration. So first of all, we're going to make sure that we didn't touch on this. Part of the Secretary of State's office is also to monitor securities. Securities monitoring means that the Secretary of State's office is responsible for making sure that businesses like Ponzi schemes and pyramid schemes, companies that take your money and say, hey, it'll be safe with me. Just trust me. I'll take your money and give you a return later. And then they go and steal your money. The Secretary of State's office is responsible for monitoring that. It's called administering the Georgia Securities Act. So we'll make sure that under a King administration, we're on top of that, because the last thing you want to do is work your butt off for your career and for your wealth. And all of a sudden that wealth is stolen. That will discourage people from moving into Georgia for sure. Mm-hmm. And secondly, as I alluded to earlier, making the business licensing process efficient. When I announced that I was going to run for Secretary of State, I have a lot of relationships, over 300. I got phone calls from people complaining about how long it takes for their license to get turned around. And on the campaign trail, I spoke to a father of a young lady who had gone and worked her butt off to get a degree from one of the top massage therapy schools, pardon me. And when she came back to Georgia to get her license, they didn't give her license because it was just red tape. It took her months and months to get an answer. And she decided to pick up her bag and take her massage table all the way to Chattanooga. And she opened her clinic in Chattanooga. Mm. That is not the best state to do business in. We can't run businesses away from Georgia. We got to bring them back into Georgia by making it easy to do business in. And those solutions that I just gave you will make it easier to do business in. And then lastly, if there's a lot of controversy around our most foundational right to vote, people may not want to move to Georgia because of that. So we've got to make sure that our voting is trusted, that our voting process is secure, and that people feel like when they cast their vote is protected and that it counts. So those are the three areas that are priorities under a King administration: our elections, and I have a great solution for that, the only candidate with that solution; our business licenses and formation, I have a great solution for that. No other candidate has that experience or those solutions. And then on securities, basically, we've got to do our job. There's a company that went defunct last summer called First Liberty Building and Loans. They had been operating for 10 years without having their license reviewed, without having their business updated through the Secretary of State's office. I can't do that in my construction company. That was basically a dereliction of duty from the Secretary of State's office. They fell asleep at the wheel, and Georgians lost money because of that. So it's a failing situation, Brother Wise. We got to turn this office around. And I'm the only candidate that's ever done a turnaround. I have a solution to assess the situation. I have a 90-day plan to turn it around. And on day one, we're going to implement core values of integrity first, service before self, and excellence in all we do.
All right. Let's talk about securities. You brought that up. Most people don't even realize this, but what does the Secretary of State do with securities in Georgia? I don't think most people understand that the Secretary of State plays a role in that. Yeah.
So their job is to regulate industries or businesses that operate within the confines of the Georgia Securities Act. There's the SEC, that's a federal regulatory agency, the Securities and Exchange Commission. But in Georgia, because we are federalism, states have a lot of power and rights here in the United States. They have their own Georgia Securities Act, where any business that positions themselves to receive funds or investment funds from the citizens, they've got to be monitored. And the Secretary of State's office, I think, now this part I'm not absolutely sure about. I think they have about 10 people that works in that division that's supposed to monitor hundreds of thousands of businesses, at least tens of thousands of businesses in Georgia. And I'm just not sure if their capacity is to the point where they can cover that. I'm not real sure what the dysfunction is. Okay. But what I will do is I will find out what the dysfunction is, and I will correct it. I will fix that, because I don't want any retiree to have a concern about whether or not they're going to be taken advantage of from a Ponzi scheme or a pyramid scheme, because as you may know, it's becoming a lot more prevalent nowadays. Fraud, schemes, pyramid schemes. It's happening more and more. And we need to pay attention to it as a state agency, because our job is to protect our citizens. And that's what we'll do under a King administration.
Absolutely. Georgia has seen more than its fair share of investment scams, for sure. And obviously it makes the news. It doesn't make the state look, that great. What's your plan? How do you plan to protect everyday people, especially the senior citizens, because they seems like they're like number one, when it comes to these scammers out here attacking. They tend to try to go after, the seniors that may or may not know much, when it comes to securities and technologies and
Right.
things of that nature. And in your opinion, do you think the current enforcement tools, are strong enough?
No, sir, because that wouldn't have, the First Liberty Building and Loans collapse would not have happened if we had the proper oversight. So we need to have training, and we didn't have enough staff. And what I'm going to make sure we do is we're going to have metrics. There's so many businesses that need to be reviewed. There's so many people that can review them. So we had to break it up into tranches, and over time, I'm going to have milestones that my employees are going to have to meet in terms of making sure they review 5 companies, within the first week, or whatever the term, whatever the frame is. We're going to have a plan. We're going to have metrics that we can measure, make sure that we're meeting those expectations. What we're also going to do under King administration is we're going to conduct town hall events where we can train seniors, or at least educate seniors on what are the scams that's out here right now. If you're not aware of what's going on, you're more susceptible to step into that trap. So when phone calls happen, seniors need to know that AI can make your granddaughter or boy sound just like the real life person, but it's really a machine. And they need to know what questions to ask, what information needs to be disclosed when they receive these phone calls. That's part of protecting our electorate. That's protecting our citizens. That's what we'll do under King administration, and that's what's required under the business services and the security side of our office.
Outstanding. Let's talk some modern investing. Crypto is growing. That's huge. Everybody's talking about all the different cryptocurrencies out there. In your opinion, do you think Georgia should lead or regulate cautiously, more or less, in that area?
Yeah. So my position on crypto is probably not the leading edge. I'm very, very conservative. Okay. I want you to go out there and you lose your money first. And then once we clean it up, then I may want to invest my money after you. So I'm very cautious when it comes to that. So I don't want to be on the bleeding edge of crypto. I'm more on the regulatory side, to be frank with you. So I'm really big on making sure that we put together regulations, that I can contribute to regulations that allow a market to exist, but to also protect the citizens. Government's job is to protect the people. So I'm going to lean more towards being a little bit more conservative when it comes to crypto. Even though I do have some crypto myself, personally, full disclosure, but it's not a lot of money in it because, like I said, I test it out first. I don't jump into it full force before I know how a process works.
No, I'm with you on that. I'm in there as well, but very, very limited amount. I'm with you. I think we should be, cautiously optimistic that, it will turn into something, but, don't put, everything, in there because, it's very volatile, very volatile.
Very volatile.
In your opinion, how do you protect investors without, I guess, killing the innovation, when it comes to, some of these newer technologies, and the cryptocurrencies and things of that nature?
Well, I think for the most part is knowledge and information. I'm a capitalist at heart, Brother Wise. I'm a free market guy for the most part. I want to make sure that if I want to start a business, I can start it. If it's a similar business as somebody else's, that's just competition. I need to be a little bit better. So I don't want to do anything to inhibit competition. I want to do as much as I can to encourage people to start a business or go out there and compete. So I'll make sure that I petition the state legislature to reduce any kind of constraints or restraints when it comes to doing business in the state of Georgia. But when you come into the state of Georgia, we have rules. Our licensing rules, they're state oriented. They're unique to our state. Specifically, when I'm speaking towards the Georgia contractors license rules, it's unique to Georgia, and I've got to operate the Georgia way when I'm doing construction. Now in Florida, I have to operate the Florida way, and I think it's okay because we're protecting our citizens the best way we know how. So I will work with our state legislature to make sure that whatever rules are in place increases competition, but decreases the ability or the red tape or any kind of barriers to coming to Georgia and opening a company or being a citizen in Georgia and starting your own firm.
Okay, cool. A few more questions. I won't hold on to you too long, but your priority in this election, is your priority election access or election security when you think about your potential administration? What are your thoughts on that?
I would love to say all of the above, but if you force me to rank it, I'm going to rank it as election security accuracy. That is my paramount goal as your next Secretary of State, is to reinstill trust in our elections. I've heard one of my opponents, say that part of our electorate are just dumb. I disagree with that. Just because I question the elections, just because I question my access to vote, that doesn't mean I'm dumb. That means that I am a citizen and I'm engaged in America.
Absolutely.
Back in the mid-1850s, Daniel Webster was the Secretary of State for the United States. And he coined a phrase where he said, our government is made for the people, by the people, and answerable to the people. Now, Abraham Lincoln changed that phrase up during the Gettysburg Address. He changed it up, but the original phrase is answerable to the people. And I think a lot of politicians and office holders, they forget, and they think that these seats are their seats.
Yeah.
And they forget that they're answerable to the people, but it's not their seat. James Garfield said that you're just an agent of the people when you're sitting in these seats. And that is the mindset that I'm going to bring with me as the next Secretary of State, is that my job is to answer to the people. And when the people have questions about their elections administrations, their election security, I need to answer them. I don't just say, you're dumb, move along, trust me. Oh, the outcome would not have changed. No, you're going to lay out your paperwork and say, this is what I did. When I was growing up, and I'm sure you're the same, when you got the right answer in math classes, that tough math teacher would say, no, I don't want to go with your answer. Show me your work. How did you get to that answer? That's essentially what I'm going to be doing as a Secretary of State. And that's essentially what the people are asking for. And that is to show me your work. The FBI went into Fulton County because they want to see the work, not just trust what you say. We don't trust agencies. That's why we have checks and balances, because we don't trust when people run agencies. Now you don't trust them because people are not always trustworthy. We need checks and balances. So under a King administration, I'm going to be open to checks and balances, and I'm going to be open to having a election outcome that's always verifiable, that's always auditable. That's how you trust. That's how you build trust, to create something that's verifiable.
Outstanding. Let's go here. Election access, election security. Do you think Georgia realistically can have both? And if so, what would be your plan to make sure that folks definitely have access? I think that's important.
Yes.
But also, they should also have a full understanding and full belief that when I go in here to vote for whoever, that there's going to be security there, and the people say, is going to be the outcome. I would love for all Georgians who are registered to vote, who are qualified, I would love for them to go and show up and vote. Our voting precincts they've been relatively safe. Our access to the ballot box has improved every voting cycle. I know that when they talk about segments of our population not being able to vote, be it the elderly or Black people or Hispanic people, there's no restrictions or impediments at our sites that keep any of those groups of people from voting. So what I will do as Secretary of State, I will continue to encourage people to register to vote. I'm not going to push, ballot drop boxes all over the counties. No, I'm going to push security first. But access to the ballot box, we have it currently. I don't know anybody. My 86-year-old grandmother, she has access to the ballot box. She always has. And I want other people to vote like my 86-year-old grandmother. I'd like to get your thoughts on the Save America Act that, both sides, Democrat, Republican, they're both fighting over. I know down in Georgia, a few years back, down there, it was passed, a voter ID, making it mandatory to have a voter ID, and they had the largest turnout, in state history behind that. What are your thoughts on the Save America Act, especially when, over 80% of Americans are in support of free and secure elections and are okay with, saying, hey, I'm okay with showing an ID or whatever it is I need to show in order to verify that I am a U.S. citizen eligible to vote. What are your thoughts on that?
Right. I think it's a act that's um, I agree with it. I mean, it should have been pushed years ago, and I think it's a common sense act. Only citizens should be voting in American elections. Period. And we must show valid ID, in order to gain access to the polls. This is an 80% argument across our country right now, and it makes me wonder who the other 20% are. Like, what are you arguing for, the other side? So when situations like that occur, it just makes you wonder, what's the opposite argument? What are you getting at? Because at the end of the day, we need honest elections. We need only American citizens to vote, and you should only vote one time.
Absolutely.
And if you can't get behind that, I need to hear a better argument. I haven't heard an argument good enough to counter that position. So I'm a pro say that person.
Well, I mean, Georgia, you guys basically beat a lot of states to the punch. Getting
we already
in front of
implemented that in
this.
Georgia.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Y'all beat a lot of people to the punch. Y'all already implemented, and it showed that it works. And no one had any issues. No one had any issues. But I do find it.
I mean, other than the cases that come before the Secretary of State's office, I mean, there's a bunch of those.
Okay, there's probably few. I mean, I would assume that small percentage is out there. But why should a Georgia voter who is skeptical, of politicians, because, a lot of them, especially with what has transpired over the better part of about 4 or 5 years, people get out there and they talk and they say one thing and then they get into office and they are completely different.
Right.
People out there in Virginia, they're experiencing that right now, with Spanberger.
Yep.
So Georgia voters who are skeptical of politicians, why should they trust you?
Thank you for asking that question. Because first of all, I'm not a politician. I am running to lead this office, but my background is business. I mean, I'm a general contractor. I did run for office before, but it didn't really work out. And I just went back to my company. And whenever I see opportunities to help or to turn things around, to utilize my talents, I take them. I'm a believer in the parable of the talents, Matthew 25:14. And God has blessed me with a mouthpiece. He's blessed me with experience in government procurement and contracting administration. He's blessed me with enterprise and being able to grow my business. I've won awards. I'm the fastest growing company in Metro Atlanta 4 different years, pardon me. So I've had success in college. I've had success in my Air Force career. I've had success in my business career. I've had success as an entrepreneur. And I'm going to have success leading the Secretary of State's office because I have a plan. A lot of politicians, they just bloviate with words and to make people feel good. I don't do that. Some of the things I say make people feel a little uncomfortable, probably because I am going to do hand-marked paper ballots. I know that it fulfills the rule of law. And I know that we can do it now under emergency procedures. And that's what I'm going to do as an executive. And I'm going to tell people what I'm going to do, and I'm going to do it. And if I don't accomplish what I've told the people of Georgia that I do, if I don't accomplish it, then I need to be elected out of that position. I need to go home because we should not tolerate underperforming elected officials. I just heard a stat recently that is very discouraging, Brother Wise, and that is our Congress has an approval rating between 16 and 20%. But they have a re-election rate of 95%. So what are we doing as people? We need to look at our elected officials and hold them accountable. I certainly am. And you need to hold me accountable. When you elect me to be Georgia's next Secretary of State, everything I wrote on my platform, you press me on it. And you make sure I give you a time frame when it's going to get done, how it's going to get done, who it's going to affect. Question and pressure me because that's my job. And I'm going to do my job. And if I don't, fire me.
Okay. Let's talk about this establishment, the establishment, on the conservative side of things. What's something that you believe that the political establishment in Georgia won't like about you or your platform, or your stance?
The establishment won't like that I'm not part of the establishment. I'm a man that can stand on my own 2 feet. Like I said, I've had success in business, and I've been able to fund much of my campaign myself
Mm,
personally.
okay.
So I'm not at the behest of, the governor's family, or the lieutenant governor's family, or the Secretary of State's family, or some congressional family. I don't operate under the thumb of anybody other than the Lord Jesus Christ, and that gives me a unique way of speaking. I carry myself in a very confident way because I know who I answer to, and I am going to be authentic to my positions. I want to help the people of Georgia. That's the only reason why I'm doing this. I don't need this job. I don't need this income. I can go up to my farm. I own some land in North Georgia, and I can homestead and be happy for the rest of my life. But that's not what God wants me to do. God wants me to utilize my talents and my treasures and implement new ideas like hand-marked paper ballots, like election night reporting, like my ideas when it comes to business services, like getting on top of monitoring our securities businesses and firms throughout the state and make sure they're doing what they're supposed to do. That's what I'm obligated to do, and that's what I'm going to do as Secretary of State.
Got you. Okay, so I know I know you're listening. I know you are listening to what folks have to say about you.
I do.
What are your critics saying, and
Okay.
What are they getting wrong?
Great question. I'm glad you mentioned that. What I hear from the Democrats the most, and my opponents that are losing to me, they'll say things like, "Oh, well, Kelvin, his wife is on the state elections board. How can he be running for Secretary of State when his wife is on the state elections board?" It means that they're ignorant to how the process works. My wife, I don't have any advantage over any other candidate in this race because what I utilize is what's presented in public testimony. The state election board meetings are all public, and I'm learning a lot when I listen to them. And I encourage all my opponents to learn too, because it sounds like they're not informed on how the state election board works. But there is no conflict of interest. And when I become Secretary of State, and if my wife is having to recuse herself because I'm now the Secretary of State, she will step down. In fact, I would like her to step down once I win, just to eliminate any kind of noise. But people have a right to ask questions, but I would rather for people to educate themselves on how the system and the process works. There's no legal violations that I'm occurring by running for office, and my wife is on the state elections board. In fact, I think it's weird for the Secretary of State, who's over elections currently, to be running for governor. So he's going to oversee his own election. Like, to me, that's kind of strange.
Yeah,
that's kind of weird. So, I mean, and there's some contradictions in my race too. One of my opponents, he helped put together rules for the Secretary of State's office over the last year, and he's running for Secretary of State. So he's basically putting together rules for himself as a legislature. There's no conflict of interest there. So that's one of the biggest complaints. What else do I hear? I hear Kelvin King has a business that does work in Georgia for the state. And I'm like, yeah, I do. I have a construction company that does work for cities, counties, state agencies, federal government. And when you do work for the federal government and state agencies, you have to follow the rules. Mm-hmm. Every one of my projects have been a bid project. I don't do anything that's not bidded work. And all of my projects are public accessible projects. And I do a good job. So when I do a good job, I get repeated work. So that is how my business operates. So I've heard some people saying, hey, he's going to do business with the state and give himself contracts. No. First of all, we don't even do work with the Secretary of State's office. And secondly, I'm going to remove myself from my business when I'm Secretary of State, because I'm going to give 100% of my energy to this role. So yeah, those are the two things I've heard, but I love when it comes up because I can explain the truth to people, and they get it once I explain it to them.
Okay, got you. So we're gonna get ready to wrap, but a couple rapid fire questions I wanted to ask you. Some of the things that you've already spoke on, but you can just keep the answer simple and short and sweet. Let's go back and Dominion machines. Keep or replace?
We're gonna get rid of that system. Period. We're gonna get out of the contract. Like I said, I know government contracts very well. I know how to get out of the contract without penalties, fees that the state is going to have to cover.
Okay. Voter ID laws. We discussed that. Strong enough?
I'm all for them. I'm all for them. Let's make them strong. I only want qualified voters. every illegal vote, remember, every legal vote actually takes the place, counteracts a legal vote. So every illegal vote takes away a legal vote. So an illegal vote is a big deal. You can't say, oh, it's just a little fraud. That is not acceptable, and it won't be acceptable under the King administration.
Okay. Mail-in voting, tighten or expand?
Yeah, I don't believe in that. I mean, unless it's you're a Kava, like if you're in the military and that sort of thing, and you need an absentee ballot, yeah, I'm all for that. Or if you're have a certain type of disability and you can show that, yeah, I'm all for that. But no, I don't believe in that outside of those unique circumstances.
Okay. SB 202, success or failure, or should be expanded more?
I think it was a step in the right direction, but we need to codify and really clean up some areas that were not clearly laid out. We got to get rid of the QR codes being one.
Okay. One word to describe Georgia's election system.
Untrustworthy.
Untrustworthy. Got you. One word to describe your leadership style.
Solid, clear, defined goals.
Final question. Georgia has been at the center of the national conversation on elections for a while. When your time is up, what do you want the people of Georgia to say about how you handle that responsibility?
I want the people of Georgia to say that a King administration restored trust in our elections, reinstilled accuracy in our elections. And now I believe that my vote counts. If that happened after a King administration, I would have succeeded.
Outstanding. Well, Kelvin, appreciate you taking the time to speak with me today. I want to give you the final word. If there's anything else that you would like the voters, out there in Georgia to hear from you, I'll give you the last word, and I'm going to give you the big stage as well.
Thank you so much for your time, Brother Wise. My final comments to the people of Georgia when it comes to the Secretary of State's office, I'll say, do your homework. An educated voter is my best supporter. I'm the only candidate in this race that's campaigned statewide. I have support in every county. I'm the only candidate in this race that has their own business, W-2 employees all across multiple states. The only candidate in this race that believes the state elections board needs to be its own standalone entity that can provide oversight, checks, and balances over the Secretary of State's office as well as county election boards. I'm the only candidate in this race that's prepared on day one with a solution. I've provided a platform. I've laid out my expectations and my promises, and I want you to hold me accountable to it. And I think that's what every Georgian would expect in a candidate. And again, Kelvin King is my name. KelvinKing.com is my website. And a vote for Kelvin would be a vote to ensure that your vote counts. So thank you for your time today. And I look forward to any kind of questions, phone calls. Go to our website. You can ask questions, but we've got to win on May 19th. Early voting starts next Monday, April 27th, and election day is May 19th. I'll be honored to get your vote.
Outstanding. Well, once again, I appreciate you taking the time to speak with me. I know I said an hour, we went slightly over, but my apologies. My people, they tell me all the time, whatever he says, just count on it. It's going to go a little over. So it happens. My apologies.
No problem. It was fun. I enjoyed it. And if there's ever anything I need to do to expand upon anything or to clear anything up, I'm always available. So I just appreciate your time, and I appreciate your platform, and thank you for what you're doing.
Well, I appreciate you as well, man. Good luck in the race. Now, up in May, that is the primary, correct?
Yes, that's the Republican. Okay, the Republican primary is May 19th. Early voting starts April 27th, and you've got to pull a Republican ballot when you go to the voting precinct.
Outstanding. Well, again, I appreciate you taking the time to speak with me. Good luck, in your endeavors. And if there's anything I can do or anything I can do to help you, don't hesitate. Feel free to reach out. I appreciate you and your wife's support of what we're doing over here at ARP. Please tell her, I said hello, and we'll catch up with you guys next time, man. Thank you so much.
Sounds great. Thank you for your time.
All righty. Take care, brother.
All right. God bless.
All right. This is what we do. Real conversations, no fluff. Whether you agree or disagree, you heard it straight from the source. Share this with somebody in Georgia who needs to hear this. Share it with 2 or 3 people, okay? We're gonna get ready to get up out of here, man. As always, hit the like button, share the video, subscribe to the channel, turn the notifications on to all so you never miss an upload. Consider joining the ARP family or buy your brother a coffee. The link's in the description box below. And as always, keep God first. Stay prayed up. We'll catch up with you guys next time. Peace.
It is God who arms me with strength. Yeah, I'm battle ready. He trains my hands for battle. My heart stays steady. But thanks be to God, He gives us the victory. Through my Lord Jesus Christ, fear can't live in me. I was down to the dirt, red clay on my shoes, old pain in my shirt, oh so bruised. In the Lord hit my chest, kicked air from my breath, put power in my step.